Hi, I'm your host Adam Sandler, and today we'll be talking about gems. In the 90s and 2000s, casual gaming was just starting to take off with the rise of home computers and stuff like Microsoft Solitaire on Windows. Now grandma can play Mahjong on a computer that looked like a cow for some reason and also sounded like a malfunctioning jet. Then she'd go to check her email and find out she just won a free car. Little did she know it was actually identity theft. A lot of people's first introduction was probably something from PopCap, a studio who didn't just make 2000s casual games, but essentially built the model for the industry for the next decade. At the time, this was a surprisingly laughable concept. What's the point of casual games? I mean, there's no challenge to it at all, someone would have said after a 3-hour binge of sliding shiny gems around and experiencing what is probably the sequel to Dopamine. This repeated success led PopCap to become extremely valuable, like $650 million valuable. Which is a real amount of money, apparently. I don't know if I believe that, though, like a tangible thing, $650 million. Electronic Arts, a fan favorite darling in the games industry, acquired PopCap in 2011. And for anyone aware of EA, you'd know they're fantastic with acquisitions, if fantastic is the way you'd describe Anthem. From there, you'd expect the story to tell itself. EA greedily gobbled up another company for intellectual property, tried to extract as much profit as possible from it, in turn ruining the reputation of PopCap. Surprisingly, that isn't the story. EA didn't ruin PopCap. Well, they didn't make anything much better, but the problems began years before this deal went through. The following story is about a studio that had a passion for creating great games, and how that became an inferior way to make them. I'll cover what PopCap was like, their studio culture, and what actually led to their downfall. But before we do that, let's talk about how PopCap got started. It's the year 2000, and 3 people in the games industry are about to quit their jobs. John Vici, Brian Feet, and Jason Kapalka had met previously through their work on Attack, Retrieve, Capture. This was a 2D game that had players fighting in little saucers, and you just shoot lasers at each other. These 3 founded their first company together, Sexy Action Cool, a phrase I hope to never say again after this video. What was their first game, you might ask? Well, it was strip poker. Foxy Poker was a nudity-free strip poker game, which I'm going to safely assume was the first and last of its kind. The whole plan was to sell off an engine for this kind of game to other companies so that they could profit off of those companies using their engine and use that to fund real games, they said, which were essentially the stuff they wanted to make. Entering this industry came with a very important lesson for the folks at Sexy Action Cool, and that was that they need to leave this industry right now. They wanted to change the company name first, and I don't really need to explain why you'd want to do that. It reads like the bio of a 14-year-old on MySpace, something you'd see on the worst Mission Impossible bootleg in a Walmart bargain bin, like the kind starring Nick Cage front and center with his pet 2-headed snake. Yes, he actually owns a 2-headed snake, I don't know why. They liked the word pop because it sounded friendly. From there, they did what any tech startup does: search for available web domains with pop in the name. PopFrog was taken, so they settled on PopCap. Not gonna lie, I kinda do wish it was called PopFrog instead of PopCap. That name is pretty awesome. Previously Sexy Action Cool, now PopCap, set out to do what they really wanted: make a game they truly enjoyed, and a few months later, they would have it. Foxy Poker 2. No, I'm just kidding, of course. Or am I? Yeah, I am. They didn't do that. This game featured gems of many shapes and colors, of which a player would slide them to match in lines of 3 or more. It was called Diamond Mine. They struck a deal with Microsoft, who would host the game on their Gaming Zone website, giving PopCap around $1,500 a month for doing so. The only problem was Microsoft did not like the name Diamond Mine and provided some alternatives, one of which being Bejeweled. By the way, you can still go to the Microsoft Gaming Zone website. It still exists, and it might be the most boring website of all time, but you can play games like Solitaire, Mahjong, Sudoku, and Microsoft Jewel 2. PopCap would do branded advergame versions of Bejeweled, which were requested by Microsoft, and one of them was Tyson Bejeweled. So you could match Dino Fun Nuggets or something, I don't know. And PopCap was pretty content with this business model, things were looking good for him. Release a game every few months like this, Each one makes like $1,000 a month, and hey, you got yourself a pretty successful business there, especially for just 3 people. There was a slight problem though. The value of internet companies was plummeting rapidly, and Microsoft was like, hey, so listen, can we pay you less money? She.com on my bubble till I give up on that one. That one's terrible. So by 2001, they switched to selling games digitally, which only just started to really be a thing. You know, it's kind of hard to download games when the internet kind of is slow. Bejeweled Deluxe was their first offering, basically just a better version of Bejeweled, now including the guy with the cool voice.
Welcome back.
You could download a demo for free and then pay for the full game for $20. And there you go. You got yourself Bejeweled Deluxe. From there, it was off to the races for PopCap. It's safe to say Bejeweled was pretty successful for PopCap. There were only 3 people at the time and they were raking in pretty big money. They went on to make a lot of good stuff that did pretty well. Insane Aquarium had amazing RTS fish tank gameplay where you destroy your hand by rapidly clicking on a damn alien that's eating your fish. There's also a disturbingly pregnant fish in the game, but other than that, it's a great game. Really fun. Zuma had frog spitting ball action, and that was a huge hit. And when you get a combo where you'd like get rid of a color and then it would match another color, go like, oh my god, it was so fun. Bookworm Adventures was an adorable word game with some small RPG elements. You could play as a worm who double majored at the University of Applied Sciences in Worms, Germany. Get it, because it's a worm. Oh, and then there's Peggle, which is just one of the best games ever made. The sounds are so satisfying, the gameplay's addicting, and the little zoom in every time you'd hit the last orange peg, it'd go all slow-mo like a Burnout takedown for old people. There were some smaller releases too. There was Astropop, Talismania, Typer Shark, Chuzzle, I guess. It's kind of just Bejeweled, but worse, but they look cute, the little Chuzzle guys. Not all their releases were top-notch though. Dynamite, more like Dino might not play that one. By 2005, there were about 40 employees, but teams for each game were a lot smaller. For example, Plants vs. Zombies had a core team of 4 people. They grew pretty fast and experienced a lot of good changes through that, mostly in hiring people other than white men in their 20s, which is a problem that sadly is still in the games industry. This quote from employee Matt Johnston really paints a great picture of what it was like working there. The reason why that group of people was able to make those experiences was because of the culture that they protected really fiercely within that company, which was it's gotta be fun, gotta be enjoyable, and if we aren't enjoying the practice of making the game itself will not be enjoyable either. With that in mind, the business side of PopCap would pretty much let the studio do its thing. Teams had control over their creative process for the majority of the 2000s, which honestly surprised me to find out. Their projects didn't have to be the biggest and most profitable thing of all time ever made, making infinite money dollar cash bucks forever until the heat death of the universe, because that didn't matter to them. There was no pressure to meet financial goals to the point where they didn't track development costs on games during this time. They found it pointless to do that. Some devs even cooperated with a fan to make a UI mod where you could play Bejeweled in WoW, like pop open a menu that was literally just Bejeweled. And they even did it for Peggle too. I think this is my favorite thing I learned while making this video. That is so cool. They also did a full-on Peggle World of Warcraft edition that I had no idea about, and Peggle Extreme for Valve's Orange Box, which featured Half-Life, Portal, and TF2 themed levels. And I've played that one before, and it's pretty cool. At this point, PopCap was the biggest in the casual industry. They had well-deserved respect from gaming companies around them, and more often than not, they made high-quality games, and you could just tell that they cared when you played them. PopCap and making great games was like peanut butter and jelly, like hamburger and helper, like Elon Musk and being a complete moron. You just can't separate them, even if you try really, really hard. This would reach unprecedented heights with the release of
I'm a little bit concerned because I'm standing next to a zombie and we all know that zombies eat brains. I'm also here with a plant. I guess you're from that video game? Yes, we're from the video game Plants vs. Zombies. 1, 2, 3. There's a zombie on your lawn. There's a zombie on your lawn. There's a zombie on your lawn. We don't want zombies on the lawn.
Do I even really need to talk about the success of Plants vs. Zombies that much? I mean, by 2010, they sold 1.5 million copies internationally, and that would get even crazier with the release of it on iOS and stuff, it was huge. This game was huge, it was everywhere. Although it doesn't really look like it at first, Plants vs. Zombies is really just a tower defense game. You manage resources, place units that deal with specific threats, unlock new units to deal with new threats. The thing that made it so special though is just how easy it was to get into. Like, all of those aspects are usually more complex in games, but Plants vs. Zombies found a way to make it so easy. Unit selection was super easy, lane-based defense was more intuitive for the player and also from an enemy design perspective. They knew the flaws with tower defense games, and they simplified it in a way that wasn't boring. Also, stylistically, it was just so cool. Like, we went through some zombie fatigue in media a few years later. There are like 8 million different grayscale zombie experiences being dumped onto the scene, but PvZ holds up because it was the complete opposite of that. There is a Zamboni named a Zomboni that leaves an ice trail so that it can spawn a zombie bobsled behind it. The game is just goofy. Also, the soundtrack is one of the best video game soundtracks of all time. It goes so unbelievably hard. And if you asked me in 2009 what the future of PopCap looked like, I would have said, "Who are you? I'm like 9 years old." But if I wasn't a child or whatever, I would have said things look pretty good. For its whole lifespan so far, PopCap was unchallenged. But this was about to change. In June 2009, Farmville released on Facebook. And for some reason, we all played it. In Farmville, you grow crops, take care of animals, gain XP and level up, unlock new stuff, and you decorate your farm. It was extremely basic, like very bare bones. But there were two features that made this game successful, and it wasn't the visual style. Holy cow, was this game ugly. Wow, it is wicked gnarly looking. Put like a fucking foghorn over that thing, man, what the heck. Firstly, it was a freemium game, so you could play it for free. But it had farm cash, allowing players to spend real money like the stuff that buys food and housing and transportation, could now also purchase a fake cow on Facebook. Or I guess a horse if you want. Pretty cool, right? Right, guys? No? Reminds me of something else later on, you know, something you'd spend real money on is a virtual thing, and it basically had no value. I can't put my finger on it though. The second feature was Facebook's social networking integration. So you could contact your friends, play in the game, and have them help out with your farm, and in return, you could help them. Social interaction would be leveraged as an alternative to paying for the game. A smart move, essentially creating free advertising for the game. A player starts Farmville, they enjoy it for a little bit, might dabble and invite a few friends perhaps, and get rewarded in game. Then they get to play the game together, which is kind of fun. It's not really playing a game together, but like it sorta is. At its peak, Farmville had 34.5 million daily active users and 83.7 million monthly. Why did we do this? Why did we play this game? Facebook games blew up after this, by the way. Like tons of these released. I remember Facebook was just me logging on and getting requests to play the stupidest games. Like someone would message me and be like, "Hey, can you play Pet Society?" What is Pet Society? I don't know. What is that? At the time, Facebook games looked like they were the future. But if you look at the current day, mobile games just took over that market simply because of the portability and widespread access of the smartphone. So what's the big benefit of making a freemium game then? You're allowing everyone to play your game for free. How are you gonna make money? In the first year, Farmville made $235 million. Another freemium title that more directly competed with PopCap was Candy Crush Saga, and that released in 2012. I'm pretty sure most people know what Candy Crush is. Your mom played it or whatever. Did you know it has 15,000 levels? That's insane. Who is gonna play all those? If you did that, you would end up in a history book written about the only person who beat every Candy Crush level. I was so curious to see what later levels would look like in this game because I'm never going to get to level 10,000 or whatever. And yeah, watching it made me go nonverbal. Here's the cute little fact of the day. As of September 2023, Candy Crush Saga has made $20 billion. If I had to write like a cosmic horror book, you know, like create some otherworldly eldritch being beyond my comprehension, it would probably be something along the lines of a match 3 game that made $1 billion. let alone 20. On a more serious note, there have been quite a few studies on freemium games now because they've been around for a while. Only 2 to 5% of players actually spend money on these kind of games. And along with that, around 70% of freemium games revenue comes from the top 10% of spenders. So that means there's a really small fraction of people spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on these games. These games don't respect your time and money at all, and they hurt the financials of people who seemingly don't know how to stop themselves from spending money on this stuff. And they're way more profitable by doing this. They set new records for how much money video games could make and irreversibly changed the games industry forever. And nowadays, it's pretty much unavoidable on mobile. Most games are freemium. And microtransactions are pretty common in PC gaming too. Back to PopCap, they would release their final PC-focused game, Bejeweled 3, in December 2010. And it's the best Bejeweled game and probably one of my favorite casual games of all time. I love that at this point, Bejeweled style has pretty much stayed the same the whole time, but just gotten more and more elevated. Like Bejeweled 3's main menu is a gate in the clouds. Like it literally looks like you're going to heaven. The quest mode has you making golden ornate trinkets. Like this game's style is so awesome. What would you rather be? A little dumb baby candy sorter or a gem sliding trinket collecting royalty in heaven? Most of you chose Candy Crush though. Just a few more things about Bejeweled 3. There was a mode called Diamond Mine, which is a very cute callback to the original name of the game. I like that. But also it's an amazing game mode. I love it so much. I'm putting footage up. I'm putting the footage up right now. Oh, you just like blow up the terrain and get a bunch of gold and stuff. There's also a poker mode, which could be a reference to something. Maybe something. Anyway, that's my Bejeweled 3 review. Thank you for coming to watch my review on Bejeweled 3. Please friend me on Farmville so I can get a Clydesdale. Things were starting to look bad at this point. When Facebook games were taken off, PopCap ignored it entirely. They put on their horse blinders. If they don't see it, it ain't there. And there was a lot of internal resistance to go in that direction because the concept was unfathomably stupid at the time. But as Zynga grew magnitudes larger than PopCap, they would change their minds. I'm assuming they saw reduced revenue or interest in their games because their competitors were making billions while they were making millions. Regardless, talks would begin about moving to free-to-play and mobile platforms instead of doing what they usually do. From here on out, their goal was made pretty clear to everyone at PopCap. They were trying to get bought out. Before any of that though, they would cancel any non-sequel or non-mobile title they had in the works. People from the canceled projects got moved onto Facebook and mobile games, and they were far too late to doing all this. They were pretty behind their competition. Their first attempt at a Facebook game would release, it was Bejeweled Blitz, and it sucks. So Bejeweled Blitz is a competitive social version of the original game that released in April of 2010. The main mechanic introduced with this one is an equipable power gem system. So you slot it in and it's a one-time use thing. So once you've done one round with it, it disappears. These power gems do a variety of things, but generally how it works is if you match 3 of them, the entire screen blows up. And you just get way more points if you equip a power gem. Here's some footage of me playing without a power gem. And here's some footage of me playing with a power gem. You see what I'm saying? The score difference between not using a power gem and using one is significant. I think I got maybe like 100,000 when I didn't have one, and my high score so far was 44 million with a power gem. So basically you need to equip these. Now the problem is power gems cost in-game currency that you can spend real money on, but you can get power gems from your friends if they gift them to you, which this whole system might sound familiar, right? So there's a way to pay to do better, and then you can have your friends help you not pay. From there, there's some weird stuff, like there's features that are uncomfortably similar to like a scratch ticket, and it like shows you the jackpot when you like miss it, basically making you feel bad that you missed it and wanting to like try again. The whole game is infested with microtransactions, so you like buy a currency and then you use that currency to buy another currency, and it blurs the lines between real like money and what a mega diamond chest is. And the actual answer is that a mega diamond chest is 10,000 gold bars and 10,000 gold bars is $20 US. That's how much Bejeweled cost when it first came out in like 2001. It's so funny that this is the most competitive form of Bejeweled that I know of, and it's completely pay to win. Like, there's no competition. If you pay money, you do better. It's kind of like a baby sensory casino. I don't really know how else to describe it. It's rated E for everyone, by the way, which is insane. There's also spins, which are like, they're just gambling. You just gamble, but since it's digital fake silly money, it's not real gambling, right? Right? After Bejeweled Blitz came out, the studio was pretty much torn in half. Half of them wanted to go back to making games how they used to with their longer development cycles, the ability to cancel things if they really weren't working out, and just designing games for fun over profit, while the other half was trying to replicate Bejeweled Blitz and move forward with that model. Not long after that, EA would acquire PopCap, and what a lot of people don't know is they didn't really control the studio for the first year and a half of the deal. EA was pretty much hands-off during this time. The buyout was $650 million upfront, $100 million in stock, and most importantly, there was a multi-year earn-out period. So if they hit certain profit goals within the next few years, PopCap would get a better deal from EA. And this is where things switched the most internally. When your goal is to hit certain earnings, what you make has to be as profitable as possible. So what makes more sense to make then? A brand new traditional PC PopCap game or Plants vs. Zombies Farmville? The choice is so obvious, but it sucks. And a lot of PopCap just didn't want to make stuff like that. They would then have their first layoffs in the history of the company in 2012. 50 people lost their jobs, and founder John Vici said these decisions were 100% made by PopCap with no pressure from EA. I'm assuming these employees were working on ports for other platforms. Since they were moving in a mobile Facebook game direction, they don't need those anymore. So they laid them off, sadly. From 2011 to 2014, a lot of people left the company because of these changes. A lot of the original talent was gone. All three of the original founders left by the end of 2014, one of which had left as early as 2011. So what is really left of PopCap after that? A game that's often brought up as the definitive proof that EA ruined PopCap is Plants vs. Zombies 2, but this is a huge misconception. PvZ2 was decidedly mobile, decidedly free-to-play, before EA had stepped into the picture at all.
Like the Plants vs. Zombies team was crunched for so long. We didn't support the team, which again, very counter to PopCap. EA wasn't saying don't support the game. If we had said, hey, we're going to release this as a premium game and then start working on a Plants vs. Zombies free to play, I think that everyone would have been fine with that from an EA standpoint. I mean, they would have questioned it, but that's okay. So like that's indicative of that. And I think that a lot of the team felt really burned. And I think it was a really sad moment for PopCap in some ways because we weren't able to celebrate what was a pretty big launch.
PvZ2 paints a perfect picture of the environment it was made in. Some of the game is genuinely really good. Like, there are glimmers of faithful design to the original that can be seen, but for the most part, it is just a freemium piece of garbage, right? There's rampant microtransactions. The game is cluttered and unbalanced and confusing because it's just constantly evolving and adding stuff to buy. It's not a good time. A clip I still can't get over to this day is one where Matt Johnston, who was originally working on Plants vs. Zombies 2, had met with EA CEO John Riccatelli at the time. And John introduces himself, talks about how his kids love Plants vs. Zombies, and mentions that his son actually suggested a great idea where you rent plants.
He said, my kids love PvZ, and they always bring me these ideas. And one of them was so good, I just had to share it with you, right? So he said, my son suggested, what if you rented plants? And you could rent a plant and it was like consumable and expired over the course of time. You could use it for a while, but it was like you made the plants rentable.
I don't mean to alarm you, John, but I think your son has been replaced with a robot. I have never met a kid in my life who would say something like this. Kids like the idea of like magic and wizards and dinosaurs, not the ability to rent. No kid wants to rent anything. The last thing that really feels anything close to PopCap would be Peggle 2 in 2013.
Peggle 2!
And honestly, it's a pretty good game. It's a shame that it's not available on PC still for some reason. Like, it's on Xbox, it's on PlayStation. Why is it not on PC? That's literally where the game got big. I'm not really fond of the new art style they went for. I still think something closer to what it used to be would have been cool. And it had some paid DLC, which isn't great, but it's a better way to do it than how PvZ2 did it. I really doubt this game sold very well. There's no numbers anywhere from what I can tell, but yeah, there's no way it performed great. After that, there's Garden Warfare, which I haven't played, but it seemed like it was really good at the time where it was like popular. Now it's just full of hackers and barely any people playing it. But these weren't developed by PopCap. It's another studio that they hired to make it and renamed to PopCap. So it's not really a true PopCap game in my opinion, honestly. It's Plants vs. Zombies, but it's barely like the original stuff. And that's pretty much where PopCap's been for years now. They released a few mobile games like Peggle Blast, Bejeweled Stars, and PvZ Heroes from 2014 to 2016, but none of these games are particularly great, and they definitely don't beat the originals, so I don't want to play them. There's even been multiple attempts at a Plants vs. Zombies 3, but all of them have been pretty bad apparently. They do some beta tests and then close them and then bring back a new one and then close that one. It's like in some development hell or something. To be honest, I found a lot of excitement in PopCap's ability to spin up new ideas and brand new games at a relatively fast pace with like new gameplay that was still casual, but it was a completely different game, right? Like Insane Aquarium isn't Peggle, but they both feel like PopCap games. It's just sad that PopCap now just chases the Plants vs. Zombies name because it's all they really have to go off of. So yeah, PopCap's decline wasn't really EA's fault. It was more the rise of freemium games and how they reacted to it. I still wonder if they didn't chase freemium mobile, would they be all right? Like, imagine they just kept doing things how they did and stuck it out and see how it went. I feel like they would have had to lay off a lot of people or would have went bankrupt, right? I don't know if they would have made it. But it's interesting to think about. It's a bummer. I don't know if we'll ever get games that are quite like PopCap games again, but I'm glad we got what we did. And that doesn't mean that PopCap isn't impacting games today. I know so many indie games that wouldn't exist without PopCap's work. Grindstone is a matching game that is super stylish, super fun, and feels like something PopCap would have made. And it also has significantly more content than a PopCap game and a killer soundtrack. 10 Million and You Must Build a Boat are both really great matching games too, so if you want to have more of those, check those out. Round Guard is a really fun roguelike evolution of Peggle, and it's super underrated. I don't even know how I found this game. I'm lucky I did. But yeah, it has characters, abilities, equipment, and like boss fights. And then you do like runs and you get increased difficulty. It's really fun. Also, Peglin is a similar experience too, which is cute. There's Octageddon, which is actually made by some of the original Plants vs. Zombies team, and it looks like something PopCap would have made. It's a really good time too. And the Glass Masquerade games are pretty cool. They're not really like a certain PopCap series in particular, but they're simple puzzle games that sound and look unique. While PopCap may be gone, I think there will always be some small space that is inspired or carrying on the legacy that they had. And if that isn't pretty neat, I don't know what is. I also want to thank the folks at MinMax who made an oral history of PopCap video that was essential to making this video happen. Go check out their channel. I'll put a link to it in the description. I'm also going to put a link to their Patreon and to the PopCap video they made. That video is amazing if you are interested in learning more about PopCap in a more long form way, because it's about like 3 or 4 hours, I think, of interviews. Thank you to MinMax, that was very appreciated. Thank you to my patrons who make this video possible. If you want to support the channel, there's a link in the description. You'll get some goodies like your name at the end of videos, access to the Discord, early access to videos, and exclusive content. Have a great rest of your day, and make sure you go play a PopCap game.
I have to say, of all the zombies that I've interviewed in my career, and there have been many, you are certainly the best dressed. Who are you wearing tonight?